for the year. I am supposed to guide you. So there's no such a thing as wrong or right situation. I'm very aware that all of you are from the Eastern Cape. I'm also from the Eastern Cape. There are some of you are not, have to deal with quite a few difficult circumstances. Guys, that doesn't bother me. That where you live, where you come from, which school you attended, those things are not something that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about you learning something new. And if you give me an answer, I don't believe there's any incorrect answers. I will kindly respond to your answer. I will not say to you that, look here, man, that's just you just being stupid. You know what I mean? No, that's not how I operate. Because for me, as long as a student tries to do their best, that is what's important to me. Okay, so please remember that, because you're going to see my face at least once a week and so forth. Just another point, for the next 2 weeks, students, I'm going to do the same work with all my ENG classes, 1501, 1502, 1503, and 1504. If you've attended maybe 1501 and 1502, you don't have to be here, because I'm going to repeat those lectures. The first 2 weeks, I have to do it with all my students. So you can either leave or you can continue staying to just hear this lecture again. It's up to you. But I'm giving you the option of at least trying to, if you don't feel like it, okay? So I'm going to start with me. So my name is Natalie Lottering. I will be your academic literacy lecturer. So I'm not a content lecturer. I'm just a literacy lecturer. So this is a support services that UNISA offers, which is basically outside of the content that you would find in your classes, but it's still skills that you can apply to your content, not just at the university, but in the working world where you are at currently. So it's not just skills for the content that you're teaching, it's other things that I will be going through. So I just want you to remember that, okay? So I'm your academic. So this is what I will be lecturing for 2025. I thought, you know, I had to do a comprehensive idea of what I will be doing with you. So the first thing I'm going to do with you is what I call communication theory. Now, theories are very important because, you know, if you see the word theory, it means that the communication skills have been tested, and now they have a full-blown theory to explain communication to you. Okay, so the theory I'll touch on, because I think that's very important for you, and also for the and also for your other studies, because you need to know the importance of you being a sender when you submit an assignment, for example. If you plan a meeting, for example, as a sender, you are the person that must make sure that your message get across, okay? Because your audience is going to be the receiver of the message. So it's not your audience's responsibility. And so that's what com theory is also going to be about. I'm going to quickly go out of here and say that I'm also going to do, sorry guys. This is how I work. I still go in and out. Language acquisition. Sorry, I don't know why that disappeared. So it will be language acquisition and communication theory. And language acquisition is just how a child acquires a language. I'm just going to do that briefly with you. Again, these two parts are important just for your basic knowledge as an English specialist, because the idea is that you are going to be an English specialist one day. Whether you're going to go into a career of teaching, whether you're going to one day form your own language school, whether you are going to go and work in another country and teach English to foreign students. At the end of the day, students, you need to understand that there's a way that how a child acquires a language. I'm not going to go into detail with you because you are first year students, but just to give you an idea, to make you almost start thinking about language and how we acquire it, okay? So then I'm going to look at barriers to communication, because as much as we have the theory that ultimately says that, you know, that the barrier, as much as we have the theory that says that this is how communication works, we also have to be aware that there are barriers to communication. And if you can figure out the barriers beforehand, it will really make your life a lot easier. Okay, so here I'm going to take out language acquisition. As I've said, I'm going to do with you again. I'm going to do verbal and nonverbal communication with you. So verbal and nonverbal communication will again fit in with communication theory and so forth. Yes? Is there someone speaking or asking me a question? Again, students, for those who only pitched now, because I am working, I don't want to go in and out with my slides all the time. If you have a question for me, you can unmute your button and then you can just speak. I will hear noise and I will stop. Okay, that's the only way of doing it. Alternatively, I will have to then stop at some stage and then look at if there are any messages for me. Do you get that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
No,
Yes,
ma'am.
Yeah.
No, I was saying yes, ma'am, to what you have said, ma'am.
Okay. Oh, thank you for being so sweet. Thanks so much, eh? Okay, so verbal and nonverbal communication we're going to do. Let me just go into my bigger slides again. I'm going to do a bit of reading and note-taking skills, especially with you having such a lot of assignments, dense, very difficult textbooks to read, and really giving you a bit of guidance in how to go about dealing with reading and note-taking. You know what I mean? So listening. I do listening because I sometimes, I started out as an English teacher. I did that for 10 years, an English first and second language teacher before joining the university. And I've taught at least 3 universities. And I've noticed that listening is a very underrated skill. It's almost like we just ignore it. I've seen that in the schooling system and at the university. So I'm going to do a bit about that also in my classes. So you will be, just to give you an idea of how you can deal with listening. Then I'm going to do meetings. Oh my goodness, this is this is a very, very important skill for anyone. I don't care whether you are a CEO of a company or whether you are the helper. Meetings are important because all of us have to attend a meeting, or we have to chair a meeting. Sometimes we have to be the secretary of the meeting. We must take the minutes of the meeting. There are so many areas within meetings that you need to know. This is going to be a life skill that's going to be important for you. So meetings, I need to have at least 2 sessions just to deal with meetings, because there's such a lot of information when it comes to meetings and conducting meetings. Okay. The next one will be oral communication, and yes, presentation skills. I know some of you are happy and some of you are dreading this part. Because, they say that after a lot of things, death, moving house, and all of the other things, people hate presentation skills. But unfortunately, guys, you are going to go into an environment where you will have to present. All of you are English specialists, so presentation skills is just something that needs to come naturally to you. Okay, we're also going to do a bit of business correspondence. Just touch on that, how to deal with emails and correspondence that would be needed within the business world. And then I'm also going to talk about a little bit about online business presence and how important that would be. I'm going to look at employment communication. And then finally, I'm going to look at your favorite thing, academic writing. Don't worry, not because it's written last doesn't mean I'm going to focus on it last. These are just a random idea of how I'm going to go about it. So it's academic writing, then academic referencing we will also be doing. Then we will be doing...
Turn off my...
Yeah, somebody please turn off your mic. Please, students, please mute yourself. Then I'm going to do report writing. So report writing, again, it's similar to minutes of a meeting where you can't really, it's just something that's going to be part of your job description wherever you go to. You're going to have to know how to write reports. You're going to even need to know. Yes? Okay, I thought I heard someone. Report writing, how just to put, how to write a report. It's actually, I consider it to be an easy skill, but I know that students battle with this because I've done so many short learning programs with companies, because I do that sometimes, where they will ask me to do a report writing session. So I would do that maybe for 2 days. And I've come to realize that it's sometimes people battle how to put a report together. And I always say report writing is like there's a logic to it. I don't care whether you are doing, you've received reports for 12 years at a school. Isn't that so? School reports. So whether you're doing a school report, an accident report, a medical report, a technical report, any report that you can possibly think of, they all have a similar structure. And that's what I'm going to have to deal with you. For report writing, it also takes me quite a session, so I need to have 2 sessions at least for that one as well. Takes a bit of time. Learning styles, yes, it's very short because, it's all about, some of you are audio, some of you are visual, and so forth. So I'm going to do that. And then exam preparation is very important. Yes?
Sorry, your slides are not moving. You're still on the second slide.
Am I still on this? The slides are not moving. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yes. If I go out like this, can you see the slide now? I don't know why this happens. Can you see academic writing now?
Yes, ma'am. They are moving now.
Are they moving now?
Yeah,
okay. I wonder why, if I open, the slideshow, but can you see what I'm seeing here? That academic writing. Let's sorry, dear, can you see now the next slide, lecture information?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to leave it like this.
Academic writing now.
Yes, it's fine. Because as I need to actually have it like this sometimes, because I sometimes also type on the slides if I find out additional information. Okay, so this would be your lecturer information there, but also the assistant information. I think I should have actually said assistant information. Now, according to my understanding, you can have a one-on-one consultations with me, and it's normally a 30-minute consultation. And Avron Beaumont, he's the administrator, the coordinator, he's the one that does it all, okay? So you can arrange with him to have a session with me individually or however. Please, students, you can't have a session where you expect me to do your assignment for you. Okay, I can maybe help you with certain things, but I cannot do the assignment for you because that will be impossible. But if there are certain areas that you don't understand, then I can do it that way, okay? Let me just see the objectives there. If I open the same person, if I open this, can you see objectives? Can you see objectives?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can see objectives. Yeah, please let me know, because sometimes what sometimes happens is that I'm not sure why the slides stop, but let me know, then I can always go in and out. It's not really an issue. Okay, so thank you so much. After studying these 2 sessions, because it's going to be 2 sessions, you just should be able to understand what is communication. So there's a specific thing about communication, okay? Then how children acquire language. Then describe the communication process with the aid of a model. And then identify possible barriers to communication. Then I identify different purposes. I'm going to just do that very briefly with you. But I mean, for communication, there are literally only three purposes: to give information, to persuade, and the last one is to maintain goodwill. But I'll do that with you just as an introduction. Understand how verbal and nonverbal symbols are used to create meaning. So we use verbal symbols. What is a verbal symbol? What do we know about nonverbal symbols and so forth? Then explain the relationship between verbal and nonverbal communication, and understand how nonverbal symbols are used to create meaning. Understand how they are used, and then the function of nonverbal codes. I mean, even here, I'm just gonna add another slide here. Sorry about that. If I add a slide here, I hate this bloody thing. Sorry about that, guys. I'm also going to do what they call a medium with you in this session. And I'm also going to do context. I don't know why that didn't come up, but yeah. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do there. And then I'm going to do context. That clear? So if I do this, guys, I feel like I'm in the classroom. I'm still teaching you face to face. Is that clear? So forgive me if I go in and out and type things in that I might have forgotten about. Okay. So I just think I'll start with this. You know, this is normally what is happening with communication. I believe that what do you think they are thinking? Okay, what? So there's a lecture meet, wow, talking, and then I sometimes think, oh, my student, the first student says, I get it. And then the second one says, this is so cool. And then the third one student says, oh, I can't wait to get started. And then the fourth student says, I am learning so much. But what are we actually thinking? We're actually thinking. So I'm still talking, what, you know, your brain is going everywhere. You're thinking, it's chips. Is there chips in the canteen? Was homework, the second one was homework due today. The third one, someone just texted me. And the fourth one, is he growing a mustache? Okay. And so when we're looking at communication, you know, sometimes there's these misconceptions that happen. And when I'm going to talk about barriers to communication, because, you know, a barrier is a breakdown in communication. This is what we're going to deal with, because there will be breakdowns in communication. I've experienced this week a lot with just this recording, you know, online recordings. But yeah, how are we going to deal with these barriers? And so whoever is doing most of the talking, then yeah, like I'm doing now, so I feel like the sound of my own voice. I wonder if my teacher gets tired of wah all day. Yes, we do get tired, students. As much as we don't think we get tired, we do get tired. But yeah, online, because we are not doing face-to-face communication, I can't see who you are. So I can't see your body language, which means it feels to me like it's one-way communication. But there are going to be sessions where I'm going to say to you, please switch on your camera and then unmute yourself. Only if it only means that I must see your face, because I need to see your faces. I can't be teaching in isolation. And I will never say anything negative when you show me your face. I'm not going to say, oh, look at this one. Oh, yeah, why is he looking like this? No, students, it's definitely not. I've had students switch on their cameras in the middle of a session, and one of them were sitting, I had a late evening session, and she was just chilling in her bed on the computer with her notebook. And I commented, oh my goodness, look at you looking all so snoozy. Oh, you know, because I think it was March, it was quite cold. So that would be my responses. Or if someone switches on, I would say, oh, lovely to see your face. Finally, now I can put the face to the name and so forth. So yeah, that would be important. I would also like it, students, if you don't mind, to actually write your full name and your surname for me on your Teams low. You know, when you come up, I don't know how to put it to you differently. Then sometimes I see a surname like Dubela, but I don't know if it's surname or name. So if you can just give me your name and your surname, if you can do that for me, I would appreciate it. Okay, I'm just gonna do this quickly. See what's going on here with my students. Oh, okay, there's quite a lot of you in the group, so I'm quite happy with the turnout. Oh, so let me go back to this. Okay, so you can all see the slides. Okay, so yes, the idea is that, you know, sometimes we think as a sender that people are listening to you. You know, you feel like, I get it. This is so cool. I can't wait to get started. I'm learning so much. But then the audience is like, oh, I wonder if there was chips in the canteen. Was the homework due today? Someone just texted me, is he growing a mustache? So it's something that you have to identify with. Okay, so I thought this is important. When we are born, we communicate. You communicate with those around you. Isn't that so? Even when we are born, children knows how to communicate. They come out of the belly and they know how to communicate. How do they do that? A baby cries. It communicates hunger, discomfort to the parent. You know, it means that you must change their diaper or their nappy. It means that maybe they have stomach cramps. So they cry because of hunger. They cry because of discomfort. Maybe they need to be changed, you know, a new diaper and nappy must be. Or it could be that they're feeling, you know, the stomach or something is not right. So they communicate in some way. That cries tells the parent that there's something that's happening that maybe my baby is not happy with. Obviously, when a baby smiles, the opposite happens. The parent knows that the child is feeling contented. Okay. In other words, so if a baby cries, it communicates hunger or discomfort to the parents. In other words, people communicate intuitively. So they communicate intuitively without ever studying communication. And we're going to talk about that later. People, and you know, it's bizarre. I mean, there's people that studying mechanical engineer or architecture or fine arts or logistics or marketing. Those are not necessarily English courses, but yet they still communicate intuitively without ever studying communication. Okay, so just remember that for later on. When we study communication, we examine theoretically. So there's a theory that comes with it, like Newton's theory. You know, there's all these theories that exist. So theory is it's a way of explaining and understanding a process that happens in the real world. So for those of you that's going to study English, that's going to become teachers one day, or you're going to do a master's, a honors master's or PhD degree, you're going to come across, or doing academic essays, you're going to come across a lot of theories. And these theories are called theories because it is the way they work is they're explaining and understanding a process that happens in the real world. So theories have been tested. A theorist, you know, you get this fancy word called, I am a theorist. In other words, I'm a researcher, and I have looked at communication, and I can now clearly say to you that this theory of communication exists, and you need to follow that example. Sometimes a theory, another theorist will come and say, we don't agree with that theory, and they will come up with a new theory to explain communication. And that's how it's going to go on and on and on. Okay, so it's something to know about in your first year already. So let's go on to the next one. Okay, so this is just the thing that I love about a theorist called Stephen Krashen, and he says language acquisition, how to acquire language, does not require extensive use of conscious grammatical rules and does not require tedious drills. Language acquisition is something that happens naturally, and we're going to talk about that later on. Okay, you with a second language, yes. Can someone mute themselves, please? Can you mute yourself, whoever's unmuted? Oh, hi guys. Now I must go out and find. Can someone identify who is the person? Okay, let me go out. Okay, there we go. There the person stopped. Okay. Yeah, these are the barriers of online communication, unfortunately. So there's a difference between learning a language and acquiring a language. Remember that. There's a difference between learning a language. Normally, learning takes place in the schooling system, but acquiring a language is something entirely different. Because if you are 2, 3, 4 years old, you're not in the schooling system. You know what I mean? You're not in a place where you are now learning a language, you're acquiring it. Okay, so let's go further. I just thought I'll bring this Larson and Freeman in. I'm going to take this number 1 out there. And Larson and Freeman, these are theorists. Oh, goodness me. This is now really a problem. Can you please mute yourself? Okay, I'm going to go out. Okay, I think so. So Larson and Freeman, order of grammatical morpheme acquisition. So morpheme acquisition is like your basic form of, like, you know, dog is a morpheme because it's a complete word.
Ma'am, if we continue
Yes.
like this, I think you must kick him out. I mean,
Yes,
he's
I'm going
giving
to
us a
now.
lot
I'm
of
going to
this.
go out because this is unacceptable. Oh, let me just go here, and then let me see. Let me just see where the person is. Okay, so many of you, 120. Yeah. It looks like they have unmuted themselves now. Yeah, all of you seems to be muted. Okay. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, it looks like all of you have been muted. I'm just going to go out again. And then I have to find my slides. Avron? I'm going to speak to Avron now. Okay. I'm just quickly sending a message to Avron to just make sure. Sorry about that, students, because it's quite disruptive for me to go in and out also. Sorry, man. You know, sorry, everyone. Students are still here. There's one student that keeps on, is not unmuting himself. I've asked now several times, and that means I must go in and out all the time. Can you just check for me, please? No, he's not muting himself. So the students are complaining. It's a big class. Okay. Okay. Thanks so much, Bye-bye. Okay. So what Larson and Freeman basically says is that Larson and Freeman basically says, you know, there's a natural order in the first language that a student acquires a language, okay? And there's an order in the second language that the students acquire language. You know, in a natural setting, they believe that a child first learns the ing. You understand? So in a natural setting where we're talking about acquisition, you know, acquisition is about acquiring the language naturally as a young child. Classroom setting, and classroom settings are normally where you're dealing with your second language acquisition situation there. Okay, for those I have asked the coordinator to deal with those students that keeps on you know, interrupting the session. So they said there that sometimes In a natural setting, the child will acquire the ing first. Sometimes they will acquire the copula to be the linking verb. I mean, these are all things that you as English specialists need to know. Articles, they also acquire that first, the and a. So the book or a book, remember that those are articles. Auxiliary would be auxiliary verbs. They also acquire first the is and the are. So, for example, the boy is sitting in the room, or the boys are sitting in the room. Remember, singular and plural. Auxiliary is a helping verb, so they must be, it's like is sitting or the are sitting, you know what I mean? So those are the short plurals, so like short, and then you the shorts, the regular past, okay? Then third person singular, they say there they acquire irregular past, they acquire long plurals, and then obviously the last one, which I think sometimes is the most complicated one, is the possessive. Like, for example, Natalie's classroom. I am teaching that, what do I say? Natalie's classroom has approximately 120 students. So Natalie says, can you see there? Natalie says, because it's my classroom. I possess it. Okay, so that's how possessive works. And that's quite difficult for a student to acquire. Now, in the classroom setup, and this is especially for the acquisition of a second language, because you remember a child acquires a first language in the first few phases of their lives, and that first language is normally connected to their home language. Okay, so in the classroom setup, the students will maybe look at linking verbs first, then they will learn the auxiliary, the is and the are. Okay, then third person singular, that would be your third person will not be I. Remember, first person is I. Then third person is when you refer to the third person is when you refer to the first person. You don't have to know all these things now, guys. I just want to give you an introduction. You know what? Sorry, you are English specialists. Some of you know it. Some of you are learning it again. That's fine. It's not a waste of time. Then the continuous tense, the ing they will learn, the regular past, the irregular past, the article is are, long plurals, short plural, and then the last thing again, they will learn the possessive. The possessives are very tricky for students. Okay, so remember, possessives would be Natalie's classroom. So I'm going to use a lot of what I'm doing with you as examples. Okay. So yeah, so the use of apostrophes are always the tricky one. Okay, so now remember I said to you that there's a theory. There are these people, that theorists or researchers, that have come up with ideas, you know, that how a child acquires a language. Remember, acquisition is different from teaching. So this is what the behaviorists were saying. The behaviorists were a group of researchers, and they came together and they did tests, and they said that a child acquires a language. It's similar to pouring knowledge into an empty head. So here they've just used a petrol tank in this one, and there's education, you know what I mean? And what they are saying is that a child acquires a language by using this type of like a petrol pump, you know, and so you open the brain almost, and that's how a child learns the language, you know. So it's done by someone that they are copying, and then it opens. So the behaviorists believe that there are four characteristics of behaviorism. Okay, the first one is what they call imitation. You know, they say that these theorists say that a child copy. So if a child hears a sentence and the child will copy the sentence, they will practice it, they will repeat the sentence, they will positive reinforce the sentence, and then this will becoming habit forming by repeating it. And I'm going to give you an example. I will, for example, let's say I'm a child, and I will say, and my mother would say to me, Natalie is Natalie is clever. Okay, so the what they are saying is that the child will then copy that. Natalie is clever. Okay. So the child will then copy what the parent will say. Natalie is clever. So the child will practice it by repeating what the parent had said. The child will copy what the parent had said. They will practice it by repeating it. Natalie's clever, Natalie's clever, Natalie's clever. The parent will then use positive reinforcement by praising the child, and saying, wow, you done so well. And then the person will do a habit formation where they will say, Natalie's clever, Natalie's clever, Natalie's clever. And that's how they believed a language was acquired. Yes?
Your slides are not moving again.
Are they not moving again? Oh my goodness. I will have to look at this. So I'm going to go out. Can you see there by Larson Freeman? The person that responded now?
Yes.
Can you see Larson Freeman?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to leave the slides like this for now. Can you all see it if I do it this way? The person that responded, can you see it clearly?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can see clearly.
Okay, now if I go to the next slide, can you see that one?
Nah.
You can't see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Behaviorism, can you see it? Okay, so I'm going to leave it like it is now. I'm not going to open up the slide share so that you can see it, okay? You can see it now. So the behaviors, thank you so much for letting me know.
Ma'am, there's someone who is raised their hand here.
Oh, why are you raising your hand?
Sorry, ma'am.
Yes.
The book that is used, or the study guide that is used, what is it? Because I'm seeing page 46. I'm just wondering what study material is used for the lesson. Are we using the tutorials that were given as our study,
No.
or what?
No, you're not using that. Remember, this is support programs. Okay, so this has got nothing deeply to do with your actual book. You understand that? What I will do, I just have it here I don't want copyright problems to come into effect with my slides. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to send you these slides anyway. Do you understand that? Okay. So
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, so I will send you the slides. You will have the recording, and so there's nothing on UNISA that will have, but I will send these slides to Avron, most probably by tomorrow, and then you will have it. Is that clear?
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay, no problem. Then, okay, so the copying, the repeating, the positive reinforcement, the habit forming. So Natalie is clever. Now the child copies it and says, oh, mommy, Natalie's clever. Then the child repeats it. Oh, Natalie's clever. The parent praises the word Natalie's clever. And then habit forming by repeating, they say that this is how this child is acquiring the language. And even there were behaviorists like Brooks in the 1960s and Lado in 1964. They said that mimicry. So when you mimic something, is that you copy what the person is doing. You're memorizing stuff. Okay, so audio lingual teaching methods. So that's how they say a child acquires a language. They say by copying, by what the parent is most probably saying, by practicing, repeating it, by the parent most probably praising, and that's how they use it. So they say use of language drills is how repeating language structures to make them automatic and habitual. That is how the behaviorists believed for a very long time a child acquires a language, and yes, that's what they did. Copying, repeating, praising, and then repeating again. So that's how it used to work. And then behaviorists continued. Now, there's something about the behaviorists that really bothered other scientists or theorists. They said, something about this doesn't make sense, okay? This behaviorist, they do not explain how children are able to say things they have never heard before, creating logical mistakes or they're creating, or sometimes they heard before, maybe I can just say, or or how, you know, how is it possible that they can make, how is it possible that children can make logical, that children can make logical mistakes. Okay, there we have a logical there already. Like mices. I mean, if they were saying that the child, if the behaviorists are saying that the child acquires a language by copying, repeating, praising, and then repeating again, it means that how is it possible that if that's the only thing a child can remember, you know, from what they hear from the parent, how is it possible that sometimes a child will come and they will say a word like, you know, I had my nephew here from, and he's like 5 or 6, and he was saying to me, you have told me. So he says to me, Auntie Natalie, you've told me this already. Why are you repeating the word? And I'm thinking, repeating is quite a big word for a small child like that. You know what I mean? And I thought, oh wow, you know, so that's the problem. Where did the child hear the word repeating, and not repeat or repeated, but the word repeating, actually sometimes saying it properly? How did they acquire that? You know, and they also, the scientists were also saying, the theorists were also saying, but how can they make logical mistakes? Like sometimes you will see a child will say mices instead of saying mouse, you know, holded instead of saying held, swimmed instead of saying swam, or sometimes they will say tooths instead of saying a teeth or tooth or one tooth. How can they make logical mistakes? So the BA, because our understanding with the behaviorists is that they, as a parent, know the structure of the language. They will copy the language. They will repeat. They will praise the child, and then the child will repeat it. So that's the order. But how is it possible that a child can understand words that they have not heard of before? You know, that's number one. And number two, how is it possible that children can make make logical mistakes? It's a logical mistake to make, you know, if a child doesn't know to say mices, because they don't know that a mouse is one mouse, and then mice, and so mouse would be singular, but singular, but mice would be plural, you know, but yet they say mices. I suppose they just making things up, but yet they understand mistakes as well. So now that the acquisition says we are born to use language. And what does that mean? What does that mean? It means that, so the behaviorists had a saying that, you know, you copy, you repeat, you praise, and then you repeat again. Then now the innatists are questioning this. The innatists is a second theorist, a group of theorists. Eh? So I'm just going to put here in between theorists so that you can understand that. The innatists are saying, that, okay, I will have to bring this all down now. Okay, so the innatists are saying that, oh my goodness, this doesn't make sense. Now, there's a theorist called Chomsky. So if you're going to study English, people, Chomsky is going to be your friend. He's the master. It's like when you sometimes have the theorist of all theorists, you know. I love Chomsky's work, and he's one of those theorists that you have to investigate. So theorist Chomsky came up and he says, he argues that behaviorists cannot provide sufficient explanation for children's language acquisition for the following reasons. This is what he's saying. Children know more about language structure than they could learn based on what they hear. Okay, they know more about it, surprisingly, and it would be the problem with them knowing more about it. What they can hear is some, they hear stuff that the parents have says, but they know more. Okay, so they hear, the behavior says the child repeats, copy, praise, and then repeat again. So that the behaviors are saying, well, yeah, this is how it works. But Chomsky is saying, no, it's not the way it works. Children know more about language structure than they could learn from the parent based on what they hear. They know more. So they might hear certain things from the parent, but in essence, when you study children, they know way more than what the parent could have taught them. Okay. Number two is that children are systematic. Sorry, number two would be, let me just go. Yeah. Number two would be the one in the right corner. Children are exposed to language that includes false starts and incomplete sentences. That's true. When we speak, we do not necessarily start correctly. You know, there's incomplete sentences because, you know, speaking is different from writing. Okay, and I'm going to do a session with you. When I speak to you, it's very different from when I write to you. Okay, because when we speak, students, if I speak to you, I can ask you a question and I can say to you, how was your day? And you would say to me, your day was, okay, maybe start with what time, maybe I must just open up another slide. I can ask you, I'm trying to get rid of this bloody thing at the bottom. Okay, so I can ask you, how was your day? Sorry, okay, what time did you get up this morning? What time did you get up this morning? What time did you get up this morning? And you will answer me 7 a.m. Okay, then that would be the answer. Okay, what time is your ENG1503 academic literacy lecture? And then you would say to me, from answer would be 12 to 2 p.m. Okay, 2. Okay, let me put it to you this way. Okay, what time will you go to bed tonight? Will you go to bed tonight? And you will say 10 p.m. Just giving you a typical example. Have you noticed here that the wording, when you speak to each other, speaking comes easier than writing, you know, 10 p.m. or maybe 2200, okay? Just to make it clear, okay? So now, what I am saying to you here is that when I'm speaking to you, when we're speaking, there's always like not full sentences. You know what I mean? It's incomplete sentences. They are just quick answers that you are given. But if I tell you to write this out for me, what time did you get up this morning? Did you get up? Or did you wake up this morning? What time did you wake up? Let me wake up this morning. You will say to me, so if I had to tell you to write that, it will sound like this. Mrs. Lottering wanted to know what time I woke up. Because in writing, you have to put the context. Woke up this morning and I responded that I woke up at 7 a.m. Okay, can you see what I mean? So when we are writing, it's way longer because you have to put the time in it. Okay, so I have to say, in addition, okay, she also wanted to know when it says the ENG1503 will be commencing or starting, and then starting, and I responded. Can you see how long it becomes? Because I have to put context, and I responded that it will start at 3. what is it, 14, start at 12, dot, dot. Okay. So then, okay. And then she finally, can you see there? Wanted to know. She finally wanted to know. Sorry, guys. Wanted to know what time I will go to bed tonight. To bed, when time I will go. Will go to bed tonight. And then you will say, I responded again that it will be at 2200. Can you see there? So with speaking, it's very easy because you see the person's body language, you speak to the person, you can almost like answer directly. With writing, however, you have to put things into context. Okay, so this is what he's actually saying. You know, sometimes when we speak, you know, if the child hears the parent, then the children are exposed to language that includes false starts, incomplete sentences, yet they learn to distinguish between grammatically correct and incorrect sentences. So sometimes students, when they speak, you know, the example that I'm given to you is that there will be incomplete sentences. Sometimes when we speak, there's incomplete sentences, there are false starts, but when we write, it's very different. But yet this child will still be able to understand, you know, and that's again the problem with what the behaviorists are saying. The first problem is that the child knows more about the structure than they could learn from a parent. You know, they know more based on what they can hear. The second one is that children are exposed to language that includes false starts, incomplete sentences. When we speak in the household, children will hear false starts, incomplete sentences from the parent, yet they learn to distinguish between grammatically correct and incorrect sentences. And then the next one, it says children are not systematically corrected and instructed on language by parents. And that's true. Those of you who are parents might know that. Okay, and so forth. So this is just the example that I've given to you. So if I continue with the innatism, remember we've studied two theories already, the behaviorist and the innaticism. And the innatist says that children are biologically programmed for language. Language develops in a child in the same way of other biological functions. And how does that work? Okay, so this is what they are saying. The innatists are saying, the next group of theorists, they're saying learning to speak is exactly the same way as we learn to walk. We don't do it via what the behaviorists are saying. They're saying that when we learn to speak, just like we're learning to speak, that's the same way that we learn to walk. Look at a child. No one teaches a child how to crawl. No one teaches a child how to start walking for the first time. It's just that at a certain month, the child starts getting up and then the child walks. I mean, it goes wobbly, but it learns to walk. And then as they are getting older, the more. So that's in the DNA of a child. What the innatists are saying, is that learning to speak, like we are speaking now, is the same way we learn to walk. And so they call this a language acquisition device. There's a language acquisition device that we are born with. So that's the innate ability, language ability is like a black box containing universal grammar principles that apply to human language. And this is where the innatists are saying that we are born with a black box, like an open box. Okay, just like we are born with other DNA functions, you know, like a child learns to crawl and to walk, etc. So they're saying that there's a black box, and in this black box, as the child gets older, they fill this with universal grammar principles that apply to human language. And this is quite interesting because you can see when language acquisition device say when a child is 3 months old, that child can Google and gurgling, goo and da 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 da. By 6 months old, they babbling. You know, by that time, when it gets to 6 months, the parent wants to know, can you say mama? Can you say dada? Can you say go go? You know, that type of thing. They want to know whether the child can understand. By they say, and remember, this all is not done like the behaviorists are saying that it's done because of the behavior that the child is copying from the parent. No, this is not what they're saying. They are saying that the child, behaviorists are saying, it's, you know, the child copies you, they repeat, then you have to praise them, and then the child repeats or memorize again. The child says, the innator says, the language acquisition device allows this child, just like they learn to walk, they learn a new language. So by 6 months old, they are babbling. By 12 months already, a child can have their first words. By 18 months, a child knows 5 to 40 words. By 2 years, a child will know 150 to 300 words. Crazy, eh? They actually know 2 to 3 sentences. Okay. Then by 3 years, a child will know 900 to 1,000 words. They can even ask questions. It might not be in a perfect sentence, but they would ask, me hungry, you know, food, you know, that type of thing. 4 years, the child will actually know 2,000 words, and that's plus 5-word sentences. By 5 years old, a child will be able to identify letters. They will be able to create longer sentences. So they will be able to, you know, normally by 5 years, a child goes to pre-primary school. And then by that time, the child will be able to know five words and also be longer sentences. Okay, so that's what the behaviorists are saying. Sorry, this is what the innatists are saying. And they say evidence to support innatism is that virtually all children learn their mother tongue. So mother tongue is the language that you hear all the time. At the time in their life when they would not be expected to learn something else so complicated, i.e. biologically programmed. So a child learns words in their mother tongue, you know, as young, and sometimes complicated words, you know, so it has to be biologically programmed in order for them to understand that. And the innatists are saying that, well, that we have done our research. This is the evidence that our child is born with an empty box. The box is called a language acquisition device. And as a child, just like they learn to walk, this is how they learn a language. Okay. So, okay. So two different views. There are two different views how grammar, how universal grammar. So universal grammar works in a second language acquisition. For the first language, it is easy because that's a language that you grew up with. Remember, in most cases, a child that acquires a language between the ages of 2 to 5, the fastest in their life. That is why for them, a child to acquire language at that period is crazy. You trying as an adult to acquire language will take you a long time. But it's amazing that language acquisition device, that black box, that universal grammar that they learn, it happens between normally 2 to 5 years, 6 years old. Okay, so they call it universal grammar. You know, there's in second languages, it will obviously be a bit different. You know, when it comes to, for the home language, it will be the same, but there's a difference in the second language because, you know, home languages, I will just have to look at, sorry guys, I'm just going to switch this off. Sorry, I didn't realize it was going to go off the whole time. Sorry about that. And then, so under universal grammar may be present and available to second language learners, but its exact nature has to be altered by prior acquisition of the first language. So for a second language students that you are most probably going to teach one day, acquiring the second language will be different from acquiring a first language, because within a first language, normally the acquisition of the language for those first 2 to 6-year-old years will be a natural process. But for the second language, it needs to be taught in the classroom. So remember, I said to you, there's a difference with language acquisition, which is normally in the home language, and then acquiring a second language, because that's sometimes have to be taught in some instances. Okay, so and universal grammar may be present and available to second language learners, but its exact nature has been altered by prior acquisition of the first language. So second language will be altered by prior acquisition of the first language. So the first language is there, the child gets it, you know, they get the black box, but the second language obviously will be different, and that it's just something that you need to remember. I'm not going to go too into the second language now because it will take too much time. I'm just concerned more about the first language. So let's go to the next one. Now, remember, we talked about the behaviorist. We talked about the innatist. Okay. Anyone that wants to ask questions? Okay. So the second one is the innatist, and then the third one would be the interactionalisms. And this is also, these are also theorists, eh? Theories. Yes.
No, ngibhalile
Oh my goodness. Someone please unmute. So these are also theories, eh? The interactionalism. So children believe that, so the first one is the behaviorists. The second group of theorists would be your innatism. So the third group of theorists is your interactionalism, and they add to what the innatists are saying. They're not adding to what the behaviorists are saying. They're adding to what the innatists, they say. They believe that children learn their first language through a combination of innatism. So they believe in the black box. They believe that a child acquires a language just like they learn to walk. They believe all of those. They believe that a child coos at a certain age, that by 5 years old, the child will be able to learn 2,000 words, all of that they believe. But they also, the innate interactionists are saying that the environmental factors must also be taken into consideration. Okay, so what would be the environmental factors? Environmental factors is, let's say there's a child that a child that comes from Japan, but this child is then born into South Africa, into the Eastern Cape, where the child will then be exposed to isiXhosa quite a lot. So which means that child, because of the environmental factors where the child has grown up, because of that age where they acquire language easily, that child will then be able to speak isiXhosa quite fluently. So that's where and that is where the interactionalism are saying. They're saying, yes, we agree with the innatist theorists, but we also understand that there are environmental factors. And sometimes we see that often where we see, for example, people that can speak Afrikaans, you know, that might not be their first language might be Zulu, or it might be Sesotho, but then they can speak Afrikaans perfectly well. But that child then grew up in an environment during that period of time where they were exposed to Afrikaans or Sesotho more, and then that then became their mother tongue, and then they can basically learn the language in that way. So the interactionalism, they are the ones that says that the environmental factors make sense. And I get that. The environment plays a major role, okay? So a child's inborn capacity to develop language is crucial. And language a child hears from adults in his or her world. So we must take into consideration the inborn capacity. So that DNA, the black box, you know, is crucial. We must take that. But also is important, the language that a child hears from adults in his or her world. If a child hears, for example, at home, English a lot, you know, that child then will become fluent in English. If the child hears isiXhosa a lot, the child will become fluent then, because that is what the child hears a lot in his or her world. Okay, so that's just the reality of language acquisition, you know. And so by the time of primary education, like primary learners have already acquired their first language, but most encounter a second or third additional language at school. So when we're talking about acquiring the first language, I'm not saying that the first language is going to be perfect. Obviously, there's home language education, there's additional language, first additional language education. You've come through this, but that the child will learn additional things in the classroom. But by primary education, learners have already acquired most of their first language, but most encounter a second or third additional language at school, okay, where they are being taught. So the first language is English. Then maybe the second language would be Afrikaans, or the second language will be isiXhosa. If the child acquires a first language like isiXhosa, then the second language would be English. I mean, oh, guys, that's a huge debate that I don't want to go into now, because my research is very big on mother tongue education. I'm big on that, and I get a lot of resistance, because I do believe that if a child acquires, for example, in the environment, a first language that they hear often, you know, so in other words, a child hears isiXhosa often, you know, that's a child's home language, and that home language needs to be developed in such a way that the child will, when they get to the schooling system, the child is then groomed into that first language. I know in the schooling system, if they do continue with, for example, the home language or isiXhosa or Sesotho in their home language for grade 1 and 3, but then they switch over to English in grade 4. And I firmly believe it messes up our students so badly, because just like we have had the ability to develop Afrikaans into a language of where Afrikaans is being taught in every language possible. Sorry, it has been taught in life sciences, in physics, and in history, or whatever they call it nowadays. Those children, because the home language is taught in the schooling system, those children are normally do way better to acquire a second language, because in order for you to acquire a first language, guys, sorry, in order for you to acquire a second language, sorry about that, you need to have a very well developed first language, because in order, and this is for everybody in the world, but in South Africa we fight, you know, we don't want our mother home languages to be developed, you know, we argue about that, and I maintain and I will be crucified for this for the rest of my life, that a child must be taught, if their first language, or what they hear for the first few years in their lives were isiXhosa, for example, then that language should be developed up until grade 12 for all their subjects, because that then changing over to English, even at university level, is going to be much easier, because a child has such a solid foundation in the first language. And this is the reality of even when you go to Germany or to Italy. I mean, the entire world speaks their mother tongue, you know, because this is what they grew up with. But I was listening to Putin yesterday, the president of Russia, and not once did this man even bother speaking English. He was speaking in his mother tongue, and there was a translator. You know what I mean? In China, the president speaks Chinese. But in South Africa, there's this obsession that we must speak English. And I feel, why can these big countries get away with it? You know what I mean? There's only 9 countries in the entire world that has English as a mother tongue. Yet we are obsessed in South Africa that we must have English as a mother tongue. Yeah. It's just something that I feel you need to know about. But yeah, you're allowed to disagree with me. Anyone that has an opinion about that?
Yeah, I
Yes.
actually do.
Okay.
Because mainly we have a diverse country and there's a lot of people who speak different languages, including Chinese, Russians, other Africans, even us. Like, I know when I go to Pretoria, I feel like I'm in a different country because I don't know Tswane.
Yes.
So I think English, so I do disagree with you. Like, I believe English is the best medium for communication in our country.
But can I ask you a question? I agree that the argument always comes up that that there is this, you know, we have all these languages. But I mean, in places like China, in Brazil, where they speak Portuguese, in China, there are also many languages in those countries, you know, different types of dialects and so forth. But there is still this desire to speak their mother tongue. We cannot, guys, we cannot continue with this idea that that language is you know, English is the language of the world, it's a common language. Yes, you can learn that common language if you have a solid foundation first language. What we are creating with, especially with our indigenous languages, because our children hear when it comes to the mother tongue or the acquisition of a language, those maybe in a different language, you understand that they hear that in the indigenous languages. Now for 3 years they go to school, they continue with that particular language, then it gets subtracted, and then English becomes the language of education, learning and teaching, you know. So what happens with that is, students, that now because a child hasn't developed English maybe from the day that they started acquiring a language, they almost like messing up the child now from by taking the mother tongue away and then creating and then bringing in English. So the child doesn't have a properly developed mother tongue. To answer your questions, we can have in different provinces, like for example, the Eastern Cape. Why can't we just, because most of the people in the Eastern Cape, for example, speak English, speak isiXhosa. Why is it that we cannot develop our languages so that our isiXhosa students can benefit from it? Why can't we develop it? If we could develop Afrikaans, if the Afrikaner could develop Afrikaans up until a language of university, at university level, and even up until with the workplace, but yet those Afrikaners, because they have such a good understanding of their first language, which is Afrikaans, they can switch over to English very easily. Do you understand that? I believe, guys, that our students struggle with the English because there is not a well-developed language. So the child must first find out, okay, this is, how can I translate this? I mean, that's not fair to children in the schooling system. You understand that? Because Afrikaans speaking people didn't have to go through that. The only time they heard Afrikaans, or only time that they heard English was in the English classroom. The only other times that they heard where they actually hear English is in the English classroom. Everything else, when they go home, they speak Afrikaans. When they speak with their friends, they speak Afrikaans. When they go into the classroom, they speak Afrikaans. Do you know that that child develops cognitive, academic, language proficiency skills to a level that whatever they do, they can change it over into a second language, that's English. We are sometimes doing an injustice to our own children, because I feel that a child that's in matric, you know, that have to grapple not just with the content, but also grapple with the language, that's heartbreaking, because they should not be grappling with a language. They should be grappling with the content of what they need to answer in that question paper. And you know, as students, I've done research with students how difficult it is. Even if you were in an English classroom for your entire existence, it's still difficult because you are hearing different languages at different spaces and so forth. A German person, for example, when you go to Germany, you will find that in German, that's the only language you hear. Germany has about 80 million people. I'm just using it as an example. That's the only language you hear. There are obviously dialects within the German language and so forth. I think your argument that students tend to tell me is that, firstly, ma'am, we can't translate into our languages. Absolute nonsense. If we could, if the Chinese or the Indians or whatever can find words for their language, then we can find words for our languages. The Afrikaners found Afrikaans words for languages. So that's number one. Number two is we can have, for example, 5 home languages. Maybe the one is English, maybe the other one is Afrikaans, maybe in the Eastern Cape we can have isiXhosa, we can have in the Pretoria, Joburg area, we can have Tshwane here, we can have these different languages if we want to. But because we have such a resistance, you know, because English is supposed to be this wonderful language and it's international. No, there's only 9 places in the world that speaks English fluently. It's South Africa that speaks English that, to a point. It's America, it's the UK. If you go to Italy, guys, you're not going to hear English. You're not going to hear it. You're going to hear the children speaking in their mother tongue. Okay? Anyone with a comment about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, I don't mean to decline any of the opinions the other students said, but the reason why I see this way, ma'am, is that South Africa is still under the common realm, which is still under the influence of the UK.
Yes.
That's why English is the top language in South Africa, because we are still under the influence of the UK.
So when are we going to get over the influence of the UK? When are we going to get to a point where we take South Africans' children that's struggling with their matric question papers because they have to deal with a language that's not their first language most times, and we are also dealing with them having now to go even into a university system where English is the mother tongue, yet they are still battling with that. You understand that? Guys, this is not a point that I hear what you're saying. I'm just telling you things that I would like you to think about.
Yes,
if that makes sense to you. It's just things that I would like you as English specialists, you know, start thinking. And I'm still going to get people that's going to disagree with me. It's fine. But I'm just putting a point out there of something that I would like you to think about in the future. Okay? If need be. So thank you. I can't. What is your name?
My name is Iapilisa Mpepu.
Siakolisa.
Iapilisa Mpepu.
Okay, no, that's fine. As long as I see Akolisane, Mpepu.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your response. I appreciate it a lot. Okay, and
Yes,
as I've said, we here in these classes, we can agree to disagree. It's also fine. Okay, let's continue. So now you know that the 3 theories and you understand them now. You understand what the behaviorists said. You understand what the innatist said. And then now you understand what the interactionalist said. Okay. So I'm not going to go to second language acquisition because that can be quite a tedious thing. That I will do with you later on again. But again, you're going to need to understand within your English studies, you know, how to acquire the importance of acquiring a first language and the importance of acquiring a second language. And I'm just doing this section with you for knowledge so that you can get an understanding of these things, especially as English specialists. You need to know what is a theory. You already know what that is now. It's researchers that have investigated things and then they come up with theories, and sometimes those theories can change by people and they can be agreed upon or they can be disagreed upon. Okay, so the second part that language acquisition I'm now going to go with, leave now. So I'm going to do what they call communication theory, specifically where I want you to focus on specifically the theory part of communication. So remember when I said, when we are born, we are communicate. You communicate with those around you. So I said to you, baby's cries, it communicates hunger or discomfort to the parent, you know, and so forth. And then, in other words, people communicate intuitively. Remember that word, intuitively, without ever studying communication. People communicate because they have now discovered that in their first language, you know, they because of what the innatists and the interactionalists are saying, they communicate intuitively. There's a black box, there's a universal grammar, etc., etc. So, in other words, people communicate intuitively without ever studying communication. Good. So we figured that out. That's true. When we study communication, we examine theoretically. So theory is a way of explaining and understanding a process that happens in the real world. And you can see there the theory, the behaviorist tries to explain something that happened in the real world, but then they were criticized by the innatists, and then the interactionalist says, okay, we agree with the innatists, but just add that. So the process. Now, when it comes to communication, interpersonal communication, in other words, communicating with other people, okay, there is this, it's like this little cycle, and these are the very basic ones that I'm mentioning to you now. There's a sender, I'm the sender of a message. So there's a sender. I am the sender here today. Is that clear? So communication theory says when we do well in communication, there must be a sender. So I'm teaching you here today. So I am the sender. Okay. So Natalie Lottering is the sender. Okay. Who was my audience here today? Can someone shout out? Who's my audience?
Your students.
Yes, your students. Students are very broad. Students, there's almost 1.2 million students in South Africa. Do you know how important it is to identify your audience? Because remember, if you are a sender, I teach different groups of students. So who's my audience here today?
Your ENG1503.
Hey, there we go. Very clever. 103. There we go. That's you. So I'm very clear about that I'm the sender and you are my audience. Is that clear? Okay. Yes. Now, if you think about it, when I'm sending out, yes. I just said somebody heard someone say something. Okay, no, that's fine. It happens. So when I'm sending out the message here today, then obviously, what am I trying to, let's go to the next one. Let's take this one out of here, the message. Okay, and then let's put it up there. So obviously I have a message now. So the message I'm going to put here. Okay, so the message that I'm getting to you today is what? The message is, so if you are the communication person, then there's a specific message that's going to have to go out there. Okay, my message today is to lecture ENG1503 students. What is to lecture ENG once on language acquisition, and now I am teaching you, obviously under language acquisition, there's acquisition. Okay, language acquisition. And now I'm teaching you on communication theory. So that's my message here today. It's very clear what I'm doing with you today, okay? As I'm typing. So I'm very clear with my message. You understand that. What now, this, if I'm talking to you now here, what medium am I using? And the medium is actually How am I, what am I using to convey the message? Okay, where is that thing on medium? Okay, no, I don't want that one. So the medium is the means to convey the message, the way I'm conveying the message. I am conveying the message in, where's that slide? Okay. So if I'm looking at, for example, the message that I'm conveying here now, how am I doing it? I am doing, you get two mediums that you can do it. You can get a spoken medium and you can get a written medium. So a spoken medium here for me would be online Teams meeting, because you can hear me. Okay. I'm just saying it to you there. Okay, maybe I must go to the actual thing that I was busy with earlier. Now, where did that thing? Just give me a minute. That thing disappeared too. No, it's up here. Sorry. Yeah, there we go. So your medium here is spoken medium. Okay, your spoken medium would be what I'm doing now. So I'm just going to put that and then get that spoken and take that out, because that falls under medium. Okay, you can get a spoken medium, and then you are also going to get a written medium. And your spoken mediums, guys, will be like what I'm doing here with you now. It would be the way I'm conveying the message. So I'm using spoken, would be an online Teams meeting, because there will be a recording. Isn't that so? Okay, online Teams lecture, because you are going to get the recording. Is that clear? But it's also written, because I'm going to send you the PowerPoint. So online Teams lecture. So this is a recording. Is that clear? Okay, so this is how I'm conducting it. Whenever you are the sender, guys, you need to know your audience. Is that clear? When you know your audience, you need to be very clear about your message. So my message here today is online Teams recording, and then my written medium that I'm going to use, I just want to take this back, is going to be, is going to be the PowerPoint slides, okay? I've also sent you the outline. I mean, okay, no, let me not do, because that's a different communication process. The PowerPoint slides. Now, I want to tell you what I'm doing to you now is very, if I go out here and I am speaking to my husband, for example, you know what I mean? That means that it's a totally different sender. My sender is going to be Natalie Lottering, and the audience is going to be my husband, you know, but he's got a specific name, and so forth. So what I'm saying to you is that your communication, depending who you're sending things to, will always change. Now, there are many spoken mediums, but just for this, and I think there's a slide that I did with the students, and here's your spoken mediums that I spoke to the students about. It's online recording. Spoken medium would be online Teams meeting. Let me just yeah, so it's online Teams meetings, it's voice notes, it's the actual meeting where you're actually listening to the meeting. That is the medium that they are using, the actual spoken medium. I mean, Netflix movie is a spoken medium, but it can also be a written medium sometimes, because as I'm getting older, guys, I like the subtitles. The English subtitles on. I don't know if you guys do it, but yeah, I just find that I follow the movie better. So the Netflix movie, but I also have the subtitles, and it helps because it also shows you a lot about language, you know. So a Netflix movie lecturing, you know, is also a face-to-face lecturing, can also be a written medium. Sorry, a spoken medium. So face-to-face lecturing will also be a spoken medium. Then Teams meetings. I mean, there's also not just Team. You also have your Zoom sessions, you know. That's also important. TikTok. Sometimes it's spoken, depending on you know, the videos. Everyone is making videos, so it's spoken medium. Instagram, spoken medium. YouTube. I mean, there's so many of these. Then written medium would be everything that's written, you know. So depending on the sender must determine, how am I going to convey this message? What medium am I going to use? Because ultimately, people, the responsibility of communication is not with the audience. It's with the sender. You understand that? The sender, so your lecturer, essentially, I'm saying to you that the lecturer must take responsibility. Yes?
Just to make sure that I'm following you properly.
Yeah.
So right now this is a spoken medium that we're using. This is your approach, spoken medium. But
yes,
which also has a twist of written.
Yes, because because I'm doing PowerPoint slides with you, and you can see the written part of it as well.
Okay.
But sometimes it depends, guys. Sometimes people just use spoken mediums. Sometimes they just use written mediums. It depends, guys, again, on your audience. You understand that? It depends on your audience. So just to give you an example, you are now going to submit an assignment. Have you submitted your first assignment already?
Yes, we have.
And on what was that assignment?
First assignment, I think the first assignment, well, I remember the second assignment because it was due this week.
Okay, that's fine. You can tell me the second assignment.
It was a research essay.
Oh, so you're already busy with research essays. So your research essay, guys, that the medium that you would have used there, who's going to be the sender of that message? It will be you. Yeah, you are going, because the sender is now changing. You understand? When the assignment was set out for you, the lecturer was the sender. When it was established, she did the sending. You understand that? She wrote down the medium that she used is most probably a written medium, because the assignment information was written out. That's how they conveyed the message. Isn't that so? When you responded to the message, you then become the sender. You understand that? So who's going to be your audience? Your audience is actually going to be your lecturer or the markers, or you get what I'm talking about there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the message is clear. The message must be, it's a research assignment and you have to follow the instructions, because that is what the sender gave you. But remember, if you become the sender, you answer those questions. So the message will be, your message is to answer the questions of the assignment. Okay. What medium are you going to use? Because the medium that you are going to use is maybe a written medium, because you are going to submit the assignment on my UNISA. Isn't that so?
Yes, ma'am.
But if I ask you, let's say my assignment instruction is, I want you to do a 20-minute presentation. You know what? Where you talk about the different elements of writing an academic essay. That will be what medium? Then you would be a spoken medium, because you're going to upload that recording for me. So you must be able to say what is a spoken medium and what is a written medium. Sometimes you'll get spoken mediums and written mediums. So it all depends on where you are at. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much. So your written medium would be like online Teams meeting. You see there, the spoken was online Teams meeting. The written would be the PowerPoint slides. Then I said there, the actual meeting, you know what, the actual meeting that you are attending. But the written form would be the agenda of the meeting, because that you have to get in copy. The minutes of the meeting, that's written. You know, so a poster would be a written medium. A newspaper article would be a written medium. Instagram, sometimes the comments that you read will be the written medium, but the actual voice or the spoken medium would be the things that you see. Okay. Now, the things that you hear. Sorry. So your message, my students must understand who I am. That's what I wrote to the other class. What I will be teaching you for the year: language acquisition, behaviorist theory, innatism, interactionalism theories, and communication theory. You understand that? I did that with a class the other day. This will be your the message. Is that clear? Okay, so you also have a message. You also have a message. communication theory. Okay, so I'm just using an example there. Don't worry about that. It's not perfect, but I'm not going to use that example because I've come to realize. So when we go back to this page here, so in case here, the lecture on the medium, here we said online Teams, lecture recording, written medium, the PowerPoint slides, and then the codes must be non-code. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about codes and that what that entails. Okay, so you get codes. So in this communication circle, this is what I'm saying to you. This is what the theory says. Look here, you as a sender is the person that must take responsibility. You understand that? When you are the sender of a message, you must make sure that your message, you understand the message and that your message is clear. You must be able to clearly understand your audience because your audience is going to change all the time. I can't be teaching the same things to engineers, what I'm teaching to you guys. You understand that? So, but I have to remember that. I can teach the same message because I can teach children about global warming, for example, but I can hear if I teach it to university professors and I'm going to teach it to 6-year-olds, the way I'm going to do it is going to be different because my audience is different. I can have the same topic, and obviously if I teach it to professors at the university, it's going to be about a totally different story. You know, it's going to be very educating, and so I'm going to use all the fancy words, but I'm going to teach global warming to 6-year-olds. I'm going to teach them about, hi students, how do you know what snow you know the word snow? You know what I mean? Then you're going to maybe take a very colorful picture of somewhere and you're going to say to them snow. Then you're going to take another picture, maybe rain. Hi kids, do you know when it rains? How do you feel about when it rains? You know what I mean? So the way you're going to convey that message is going to be very different. You get that? Because your audience changes. And your audience will always change. Because guys, if I'm going to advertise something about Pampers, I'm sure you all might know Pampers. Who's going to be my audience? It's going to be parents. Isn't that so? So I can't now go advertise about Pampers in a mechanical engineering a magazine. It would be inappropriate. It won't make sense. You understand that? Okay, so I'm going to, and so it's almost like I look at the Chris Brown concert that happened recently. And you know that Chris Brown sold out 2 stadiums, you know, two days in a row at the FNB Stadium in Tshwane. You know, he's sold out. Is it in Johannesburg or Tshwane? I can't remember. But anyway, he sold out to 95,000 people. Let me tell you, I congratulate the masters, the senders of those, the marketing guys that did this, because somehow they, as the senders, understood their audience. You understand that? They understood their audience. They understood that their audiences will be Chris Brown people from the 1980s, 90s, 200. That's their audience. You can't, if you are 60 years old, you wouldn't even know who's Chris Brown. You understand that? So it's senseless. You must understand your audience. And then from that audience, you're going to say to yourself, this is going to be my medium. So what do the 80s and the 90s people and the 2000 people really, how are we as a sender going to convey this message that Chris Brown is coming? They're going to look at their mediums and they're going to say to themselves, okay, as children of the 80s and 90s and the 2000s, it's good for us to firstly advertise this on Instagram, on maybe on TikTok, maybe it will be on Facebook for those in the 1980s. But Facebook clearly is not for older people. So if you're going to maybe have a concert, an older person, what is it? Maybe what is this choir's name? let's say a choir, where older people would enjoy the choir more than, my favorite song is Bravo. It's become very popular nowadays, but I can listen to it the whole day. I think it was done years ago by Jub Jub, but I love that gospel song so much. But the sender's going to know, hey, this is gospel. Older people are into gospel a lot. So I think maybe it will be the best way of advertising this would be on Facebook. You understand that? Old people like reading newspapers. Maybe it will be the best way of going to a newspaper to advertise this product, to advertise what this choir that will be singing. I'm just using an example, and this is important, guys, because sometimes we say, hey, we don't know why this bloody thing failed. It failed because you didn't understand you as a sender didn't understand your audience. You did not understand the message. You did not use the correct mediums, because there are spoken mediums and there are written mediums. You did not do the correct codes, because the code is something that I'm going to talk about also, and then the context. Do you understand that? Because ultimately you want positive feedback from your audience, guys. Don't tell me something has failed. You know what I mean? It has failed because you as a sender did not follow the instructions. It has failed because you as a sender did not follow the instructions of the assignment. It's not, I sometimes, and in the past when we had a lot of face-to-face classes, I would, for example, for my students, teach them communication skills. It was for different students, from marketing to logistics to engineering and architectural students. And I would say to them, that you have been given different instructions by the sender. You understand? When I sometimes market tests with them, then they say to me, you know what, ma'am, or Natalie, you know what? That is what I actually wanted to say in this answer. And then I'm saying to you, but the medium that is written, that you are supposed to be doing, is a written medium. You wrote this answer. I am marking that answer. Do you get what I'm saying there? You can't tell me now, since you're now marking the script, that ma'am, I actually wanted to say that. No, you can't tell me now I actually wanted. You must write what is expected from you, because you are now the sender of that message. Is that clear?
Yes, it's clear, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate you. It's still the
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay,
Very
thank you.
much clear.
Okay, now that's fine. So I'm also going to look at something called codes. There is the code that they call a verbal code, and then there's a non-verbal code. You know what I mean? The verbal codes, and there are non-verbal codes. Now, I'm going to use this as an example because this is the easiest way of explaining verbal codes. Now, a verbal code, this is also to enhance your messages, guys, to get positive feedback from your audience. Do you understand that? I'm going to use codes, and the codes will be verbal. Anything that's verbal is anything that's written. You understand that? Anything that's non-verbal is a picture that something that might interpret a verbal code. You understand? So to enhance our messages, we are also, so that we can get positive feedback from our audience, are going to look at codes. Have you noticed that within my teaching, what I'm doing here is a lot of pictures that I've added in? You understand that? Because the research has shown that sometimes if you add pictures, students tend to remember way more than where there's just words written. You know what I mean? So I want you to understand what I'm saying. So I'm bringing in pictures to express what I'm saying clearly to you, because I am the sender. I want positive feedback from my audience. Isn't that so? So I have to make sure that if I explain codes, how do I explain it? So you see the guy with a stop sign there. So in this message there with a stop sign, there are two codes there. There are a verbal code and there's a non-verbal code. The verbal code is obviously the word written stop. You understand that? The nonverbal code is obviously everything that you see there, because the guy has a top hat on. So you obviously already know that this is maybe a construction site that this person is on. Okay, he keeps up his hand to show you that there's a stop sign. So those are all the nonverbal codes, but you can interpret what the person is saying from that nonverbal code. You understand that? Okay, so the next one would be eye contact, because I could have just, let's say I didn't have the word eye contact there. It would have just been a verbal, sorry, it would have only been a non-verbal code. Because I have the word eye contact, it becomes a verbal code and a non-verbal code. Is that clear? Okay. You see the girlie there with the mic, she's smiling. So from that, we can interpret what is happening. There's the two guys at the back seems to be a bit more serious. It looks like it's a formal event, isn't that so? They're all wearing suits. You can get a lot without even seeing a word written. You understand that? And clearly the last picture is all about people clapping hands, they're smiling, they are happy. So even when you convey messages, if the sender conveys a message to a particular audience, they must be very clear what codes they will be using. I mean, black coffee, guys, this man is international. You know what I mean? He has the market, but he still, if he goes and plays in America, for example, then he needs to understand that this is an American young audience, maybe between the ages of 21 and 45 or whatever, 40, that's going to come to his concert. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm fascinated with Chris Brown concert. You know, I'm too old to have gone through it. But that Chris Brown, I think he got in a Nigerian DJ. But Chris Brown knew, if I am just in between the breaks, if I play Sister Bettina, it's going to make South Africa go crazy. And that's exactly what happened. You understand? So Chris Brown's people, marketing team or brand team knew exactly what their audience wanted. And that is why those concerts were so successful. Sorry about that. Pardon me. So you get what it is. It's almost like a strategy of saying to yourself, this is what I'm going to do there. There must also be a context, and this is going to be the last part that I'm going to touch on. And your context is very important, you know. So a context is how we communicate with each other, you know. So interpersonal, sometimes, oh, guys, when I'm going to be done with this lecture, because it's 2 hours, I'm going to say, whoo! I know I'm going to have a moment when I leave here. I'm going to say, oh, that was a long but exciting session. You know, I'm going to talk to myself because I'm here alone. My husband is at work and the kids are at school. But I'm gonna have a moment. So intrapersonal is when you sometimes to yourself. Even sometimes I would say to the students, you know, sometimes I would say to myself, when I've said something so stupid or idiotic, I would say, Natalie, well, now why did you come home and you say to yourself, now why did I say that? I shouldn't have said that. So that's intrapersonal communication, is that when you speak with interpersonal with yourself, okay? So interpersonal, so intra, anything that's intra, guys, remember, we have words, we have morphemes, you know, we have syntax, and you're going to learn these things while studying English. I'm not here to teach you that, but intra, anything that's in is one. Anything that's inter is two. You understand that? So interpersonal will be, the context would be intercommunication. So that will be a conversation with two people. So if my husband comes back from work and then the two of us have a conversation, it will become, the context will then be interpersonal communication. Small group, normally I say small group is between, I should have added this, but then I forgot. This would be at least, and I can't type it in, this would be, let's say 3 to 12 people. That's normally when you have a small group, like a little meeting where there's more than I always say 3 to 12 people. I think that's a safe number where it's a small group. So the context must be small. So you must also take that into consideration when you are a sender of a message. Okay. So what is going to be the context? And then the last two contexts that you might identify with more is public communication. So this refers to public speaking. It occurs in a public rather than private places, even though both sender and audience are present when public communication takes place. It is largely just a one-way communication and is formal in nature. So, for example, sometimes with a formal lecture. So ours, it's public because no, it's not even public because you are not all seated in one venue. You know, if you were like 120 or 30 students and you were in one venue, it would have been public communication. But nowadays, you guys respond to me also. So it will be public communication would be things like, you know, political rallies where there's a speaker up there and there's this big audience that's sitting on a sporting stadium or whatever stadium, and they listen to you. In church, for example, it would be public. The context would be public. So you must also be very aware of that. I mean, I sometimes, you know, in certain churches where it's a priest, they speak alone, you know, and I've had a very good friend that's a priest in, I think it is one of the Methodist church, and he said that's the one part he hates is when he stands on the pulpit and then he speaks alone, you know. Other churches is also maybe public communication, but because they clap hands and they say amen and hallelujah, there is a bit more interaction, okay? But it's still public. So the mass communication, that refers to the transmission of a message to mass audiences. I feel what I'm doing here with you today is mass, because some of you are in East London, some of you are in Gqeberha, some of you are in Makanda. So you know what? You are in different areas. Guys, you know what I mean? So mass communication would also have been in the past, you know, advertisements would have been mass communication, especially on TV would have been mass. Nowadays, it's YouTube advertisements that you get like so many of. So, however, the advent of social media such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, SMS, and email has led to the increased feedback opportunities. So with mass communication in the past, you know, some of you might know Generations, you know, there was those movies. We will call the soap opera. I'm not, guys, I don't know your ages, so I'm assuming that some of you are young and some of you are a bit older. So if you want me to give other examples, then so forth. So is it Generations? That was the most publicized. It was the soap opera for that was the most watched for years. So advertisers would know, if we can get a minute advertisement during Generations, we sorted, because we know 4 million people will be watching Generations. So they will then be advertising during that time, you know, and that's mass communication. So the sender knows, oh, I'm going to pay a lot more, because obviously when Generation is on its peak time, it was normally 8 p.m. That's a time when people normally settle down and they relax. So there will be more people watching and so forth. Then they will have it at that time. I mean, guys, you know, the FBOP funeral policies, you know, those things, they know exactly the context. Is that clear? Okay. So those are so if I go back here, where is my little thingy that I've designed with this particular class? Let me just go. Okay, so yeah, so now spoken would be, there's two mediums. There's a spoken medium and there's a written medium. What were the codes? I said to you the codes would be maybe what you see. Is that clear? Can you see me?
Yes, I can see
You can see me. What do you see about me? You see the background of my room. Isn't that so? You see? What do you see? You see there's a book rack and there's some pictures there. So you can see things, you know what I mean? Even in this context, there is a nonverbal code. So that would be what you see. Okay, in the room. Okay, you can also see my body language, what I look like. Is that clear? So you see me, see lecturer, and my body language. Okay, but there's also then obviously and body language.
Pictures,
Yeah.
etc.
Sorry?
I can see pictures there.
Yes, you can see pictures. There at the back. Yeah, these are pictures. There are things there on the wall. I mean, guys, this is a what do they call it? A study. I'm not a wealthy woman, please. It's a study room, but it's also a bedroom, like supposed to be a guest bedroom. So you don't see the other side where there's a bed. But this is what's important, that you see the side, you understand there. But there's also verbal codes that I'm using because obviously I am using, again, PowerPoint slides and so forth. Just look at how these popular guys, when they advertise, I'm using Black Coffee, I'm using Chris Brown and them, how they actually use codes to get their message across. You know, sometimes, guys, there would be nonverbal codes where you see a car in a picture. There's a car, and then there's crosses, white crosses. That's a nonverbal code. There's no words written there, but you know what's the message. So the message would be, if you are drinking and driving, you will die. You get what I'm talking about. Okay, so depending on what the sender decides, then obviously the context would be either intrapersonal, it will be interpersonal. So intra would be one person talking to another person. Sorry, intra would be you talking to yourself. Inter, the word inter is always two. Intercommunicational will be two. What is it now, the word? Okay, inter and bi would be the same thing, but intercultural would be two cultures, and it all comes down to the same morphemes that you have there. So the context would be intrapersonal, interpersonal, it will be small group communication, it will be public communication, and it will obviously be mass communication. So then you need to know those four. And in our case, I think this would be mass because you are all sitting in different spaces. Is that clear? If I was in front of you in a classroom, it would have been public. If I was with a few of you in a face-to-face communication and it was only like 9 of us, it would have been small group. If it was me speaking to another student alone, it would have been inter. And if I'm speaking to myself, it would have been intra communication. So ultimately, guys, what do we want? We want positive feedback from our audience. That means the sender had been successful in their message. It's all about positive feedback. Can you see there from your audience? So even when you do your assignments, because that's why I start with a session, because I want you to take responsibility as a sender to understand what is expected from you, because the audience is going to be the marker. They're going to see whether the message that you are with, the markers or the lecturer is going to see, oh, did the student understand the message that was sent? The student was told to use the medium. Also, what the medium there, guys, maybe I can add this just for your own interest. The medium, the instructions clearly says, okay, sorry, maybe that will fall under the message. The message clearly states that you must use 12 font, 1.5 spacing. I don't know, 1.5 spacing. Okay, that I'm now messing up that one. So 1.5 spacing. Arial font. That you have to follow because that was part of the message. That's the format. Some students don't even do that. You understand that? Then you want, now the lecturer comes back to you and says to you, no, I've given you 0 because you didn't follow the instructions. It's your responsibility. Now they said Arial font. That's, you must, as a sender of the answer sheet, you become the sender now by answering that question. You must follow those instructions, because that is showing the audience, the marker, that you have followed the instructions, and therefore you will get good marks. The medium, I said to you, is spoken or written medium, the codes, the context, and ultimately I want positive feedback from our audience.
Sorry,
is that, yes?
I wanted to ask, does that also apply on the cover page?
Yes, that's cover page, everything. Because if the sender, look here, your lecturer as a sender must be very clear with what she expects from you in the assignment. You understand that? You then become the sender by answering the questions. You understand that? So if the cover page says on the cover page, sometimes there must be a plagiarism document that must be completed. Sometimes they give you clear instructions that this is what the format must be like. It must be about, it must be 12 font, 1.5 spacing, Arial font. You know what I mean? You must follow that instruction. You understand that? Because if you follow the instruction, it means that you're going to get positive feedback from your audience. Okay? Okay, thanks, students. Anyone with questions so far? Are you all on par? Yes?
I wanted to ask a question, ma'am, based on the cover page thing. So,
yes?
In the cover page, in our assignment, they only mention things that we should mention or include in our cover page. They don't include how if fonts and how, yeah.
Well, then they can't penalize you for it. You understand that? They can't. It might be in the Mayunisa instructions also, so you must also go there to see maybe what they expected from you in the to be written on the cover page. But if there's nothing on the cover page, they can't penalize you for that. You get that?
Ma'am, I have another question.
No problem.
It's based on the honesty declaration letters, I think. So, on my assignment 1, I submitted there is that longer one. I think it's an honesty declaration, but it's like longer. And then on assignment 2, I saw another one from my tutorial letter, and it was like very short. And then I used it. Will that be a problem for me since I used a different one in assignment 1?
You see, as a sender, you needed to, obviously there's a barrier to communication, which I'm going to do next week with you. I would have advised you to find out from your lecturer which one does she expect you to use. You understand that? But again, if there are 2 different ones, it's confusing to students. You understand that? Even as lecturers, other lecturers, when I teach this module, especially this part, I say to them, guys, you cannot expect your students to understand, because you are the sender of that instructions. If you are not clear with what you are expecting, you're not going to get positive feedback from your audience. And that means, and no lecturer wants their audience, their students to fail, because a failure is a bad, it puts the lecturer in a bad light. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So make sure that your students know that this is what, even guys, when I teach like short learning programs on report writing or minutes of a meeting, or you know, like on, let's say, minutes of a meet or meetings, I have to teach those secretaries that, look here, you are the sender of that message, of the minutes. It's not the audience's responsibility to figure out what you are trying to say with the minutes. They must read those minutes, and they must absolutely be clear about what you are saying. It's all the audience's responsibilities to figure it out. Because the secretaries come and complain, yeah, but I send out the minutes and then people don't understand. I said, no, they must understand what you are saying. It means that you are not writing it clearly. You are not using clarity. You understand that? And so it's your responsibility to do that. Nonkosi, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you have a question. You can speak.
Good day, everyone. I just wanted to find out that why is it that Teen projects the cover page as plagiarized if it has highlighted the whole cover page? I don't know how to phrase the question, but at times Teen will highlight the cover page, and that SOMA includes or makes your plagiarism percentage to go high, because even the cover page will be highlighted.
I hear what you are saying. Sometimes, you know, you take a cover page from another document and then it's copied and pasted directly onto your page, and then Turnitin will see it as a plagiarism. You've plagiarized.
But if, ma'am, what if I wrote it from my PDF, and I wrote according to what the tutorial letter instructed me to write, including your name, your surname, your unique code, and so on?
Yeah. So what will happen is that the lecturer, this is, please guys, don't get me wrong, this is how I taught, you know, the lecturer would, if you see like plagiarism, if you see the plagiarism is now on, because I also see it highlighted, I will then say to myself, okay, this is like 5% plagiarism, but it's because of the cover page. So we simply ignore that. You know what I mean? That's how it's going to work. That's how I understand.
So, ma'am,
yes?
Does that also apply on the? Does that also apply on the honesty declaration if you typed it?
Yeah, well, the honesty, I mean, lecturers have to be realistic. You know what I mean? It's well, in my world, because I taught PGCE students at Stadio, and with them at Stadio University, I did the postgrad students, and there were many times when there would be plagiarism declarations, and maybe it's just because they copied instructions. So I would then say to the markers, look here, the plagiarism is a bit high, but because of these things have been included. So if a student gets like 50% plagiarism, hi guys, is someone talking in the background? Can you, yeah. So if there's, because I always had markers, and then I would say to my markers, look here, if it's 15% plagiarism, then you know that's because of maybe they have, the instruction says you can use certain things from certain places, but ignore that. You know, it's only maybe from let's say 20% that you will really have to look at it. So it's a lecturer's discretion that needs to come in there. But I don't know, guys, I don't want to speak on behalf of UNISA. You understand that? But I mean, that logic would dictate that you can't plagiarize a person because of the cover page, for example. You know, cover pages all look the same. You're going to have to write your name, surname, student number, the essay, or whatever assignment is all about, and so forth. Your plagiarism declaration, you know, where you sign. But I mean, that's just logic. I don't want to say to you that this is how it works necessarily, but if you have to have a disagreement with your lecturer, then you can maybe use this argument that, you know, plagiarism, I used the same cover page and now my plagiarism is on 50%, and it's really nothing to do with the assignment, because the assignment I did not commit plagiarism. So why am I now being penalized for the 15% or 10%? You get what I'm talking about there. Okay? Guys, are you all right? Are you still there?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay.
So I hope I'm answering the questions. Look here, guys, it's all depends. I come in as the academic literacy person, so you must have that. So now I'm going to do the last part. The way it's just a quick activity, and then I'll give you another activity next week, but we're going to do barriers to communication. Okay, so should the sender or the audience take primary responsibility for the success of any communication? Who should take responsibility? You can scream out. You should know the answer by now. Should the sender or the audience? Sender. Yes. Okay. Why? The sender, please, the sender, always the sender. And remember, guys, your sender changes. When my husband comes in here now, my sender's changing from you guys. You understand that? So there's a whole new communication process that happens. Okay? So why? So a very important question that a student asked me once. They said to me, but now, ma'am, if I take this lecture, you know, that I have had, and I forward it to a friend, you understand that I forward all of these information and I forward it to maybe a student in the audience. Then I say to them, the communication changes because you are now the sender that's sending the information to a friend. You understand that? So you must now, the message would be, hi dear, please find attached the PowerPoint slides and the Teams recording of Mrs. Lottering that took place on the 10th of April at 12 o'clock. Can you see what I mean there? So even if you forward it, it becomes a new sender. It becomes a new message. It becomes a new thing. Okay? Okay. So explain the difference between, okay, why? Sorry? Why is it important to consider the needs of your audience before conveying a message? It's important to consider the needs of your audience before
Sorry,
conveying.
ma'am. Can OR close her mic, please? We can't hear you well.
OR, please close your mic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, my dear. But why is it important to consider the needs of your audience before conveying a message? Why is it important? I mean, I've said it all the time. Why is it important to consider the needs of your audience before conveying a message? Because what do you ultimately want from that audience? Why is it important? You want positive feedback from your audience. So you have to be very clear when you convey your message that you as a sender have know who your audience is. You know what the message is that you are sending out. You know that with this message, I'm going to send different, I'm going to use different mediums. For this message, I want to use different codes. With this message, there's going to be a different context. And with this message, I want positive feedback from our audience. And that's going to be for any communication process. Even when I teach you as a sender, I have to be aware. You understand that you are my audience. How am I going to explain behaviorism? How am I going to explain innatism? How am I going to explain interactionalism so that it can be understandable to you as students? A lot of times, you know, I find it so difficult to comprehend because students struggle sometimes with the instructions because the sender were not clear with the instructions. But yet they want a positive feedback from the audience. Okay, so explain the difference between a verbal and a non-verbal code. So sometimes in your message, you have to use codes. A verbal code is what? A verbal code?
A verbal code is when we communicate by words, and non-verbal code is when we use pictures, like when we visualize.
Oh, but beautiful. The verbal code is when we use words, and the non-verbal code is when we use pictures. Okay, so verbal would be your written language and so forth. I don't want to go into detail with this, but there are sometimes that within verbal messages, there are non-verbal codes. Do you know that? Like when you type in capital letters, all in capital letters, what do people think you are doing when you write in capital letters? Remember, What are people saying? You've written the word down there. I am so angry in capital letters. Normally when people write in capital letters, it's about anger. Isn't that so? Okay, so there are sometimes, but let's not go there. Just don't get yourself confused. Just know that verbal is the written words and non-verbal is the pictures. Okay, identify a spoken and the written medium. So a spoken medium would be what? Anyone? Spoken medium?
Broadcast,
Sorry?
like a radio broadcast or something.
Radio broadcast, beautiful.
And
Anybody
then
else?
a written one, newspaper, I think.
No. Not when the newspaper would be written. Okay, remember your medium. You have spoken medium and then you have written medium. So spoken, for example, the medium is how you want to convey the message. Is that clear? So sometimes you would use the newspapers, you would use a voice note, you would use anything that's spoken and then written. Like, for example, I said to you, the spoken medium would be the actual meeting that you are attending. So the chairperson is speaking, and you are listening. The written medium is when you get the written documents, for example, the agenda, the minutes of the meeting, and so forth. Is that clear? And then what indicates success in the communication approach? What indicates success in the communication approach would be? What is a success?
Positive feedback from our audience.
Yes, positive feedback from our audience. You understand that. So yeah, guys, this is it. Wow, I'm gonna do the activity, one or two activities with you next week, so that you can just see, how it should be done and so forth. But yeah, guys, I think I am done. Let me just go to the students again. I will be sending the recordings like by tomorrow. I will send the recordings and so forth, people. Remember, these classes are not that's going to be content based, for example, for your other modules, some of it will be needed, because when I do academic essay writing, you're going to need that, for example, for when you write your research essays. But it is very important that you actually you attend these sessions, because it's not just going to help you with some of your content work you are doing now, but it's also going to help you in the future, with understanding how a report needs to be written. I mean, that's a nightmare for a lot of people that haven't been exposed to it. You understand, students? So try and be in these classes every week if you can. It is helpful. It is free. It's part of your tuition, whether I'm going to have how many students, I'll always be available. If I can't make it, I will send out a message to you guys via Avron that you are battling. But yeah. So students, enjoy the rest of the week. It's Thursday. It's almost Friday. Yeah, so the weekend is around the corner. And there's still public holidays next week. So I think next week, Thursday, just check your timing for next week, Thursday, whether I will be available for Thursday. Just check out what everyone had sent to you. But thank you for those who stayed. Sometimes students, I've come to realize that sometimes you might be registered for 1501 and maybe 1503 or 1502, and then also for 1502. Sometimes I will repeat the classes. You know what I mean? There will be a lot of repetition because sometimes I focus. But you know what, guys? Language is a skill. You have to hear it all the time. It's not something that I know exactly everything that I know. No, it's like a sprinter. You have to practice all the time. It is just the way it works. Okay, so I'm going to say bye-bye to you. I would love you to have a good Thursday and Friday and weekend, and I will see you next week. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Ningibhalile abafowethu.
Is there anyone doing a certificate in economic and management side?
Yeah, I mean, nangenza leyo nami.
Do you perhaps do sustainability and grade?
Sorry, okay.
Sustainability and grade.
Is there anyone who live near Sunnyside campus?
Guys, I just want to find out, do you have any idea what does one do when they miss their quiz? Help a sister out. I'm going through. Zwandile,
Yeah,
khaphendule efondini. Awuyazi?
hayi mfethu angazi nami ukuthi kwenza kanjani.
Yho, hayi ngeke. Ndiyagowa.
Hey, nami mfethu maningi kabi nje ama-quiz engiwamisile manje angazi ngizokwenza njani.
Guys, cela niphendule bethuna. What does one do when she missed quiz?
Quiz kanjani?
I missed my law quiz. It was I had
For what module? For what module? CRW?
Yeah.
For what module?
ILW. ILLW.
ILW.
Yeah.
If you missed the quiz and the deadline is past,
it was today. It was today, kaloku, with deadline. Hence, I'm asking.
At what time? At what time?
At 10.
10 was 16. And you missed 10.
Bekubanzayibhala usiphe sihle kandiva jonga siphe sihle ibivule nge-27 ne
Yeah.
qha ke ngobeni banzayibhala and I thought i-deadline yayo it's still too far, so I got a message from uMoogle that I missed i-deadline yale quiz ILLW. Yhu ndiyagowa. So khona umuntu ke othe mandenze icebo because i-lecturer ingangafuni nibhale i-exam yayo xa nimisishe ilanto kwi-quiz yokuqala, so ubunyani bazi ke ngoku.
Yeah, no, inyani, because if first assessments they always compulsory for exam entry.
Yho.
But i-suggestion yam ne, because I know kukhona le A1 nami engike ndayenza, I'm not sure uba kweyiphi module, but ndalibala ukureferensa then bandipenalizer ndafumana u-0, so ndabasendela ile ntoka, so then ba-extend i-due date baphinde bavule enye window. So eyam suggestion is that kule nto-ke you email the lecture.
Yeah.
Yeah, lecture and then explain a story. Maybe angakuvulela i-window. Because sorry? Yeah, no. The thing is, mos ilentoka i-quiz zona zi-automated yonke into yazo, so i-shutdown time yazo is specific, ayifani nelentoka ne-assignment ofuna uyihandling. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my suggestion uba ASAP ukhawuleze kule nto u-email ya ile nto ke lecture yakho ye-ILW.
Okay, ke sana inkosi.
Yeah. Let me leave this place.
Nihlalele ntoni?
Bafethu akekho wenze i-higher certificate in economics and management science la.
Inoba baza kuphendula. Uhlalele ntoni Mzandile?
Hawu kade ngibuzile nje.
Oh, sorry. Bye. Inoba bazokuphendula abayenzayo kodwa.
Oh, hayi no, ngiyabonga sesi.
Hi guys, can I ask? Hello.
Is there anyone who is doing higher certificate in economics and management science here? Hello?